all quiet down and take your seats, and we'll get started with the meeting.
That worked. Oh.
So, thank you all for coming tonight. We're really excited about having this first public meeting for the 20th and Trinity site, which is right outside. With that, I first wanted to go ahead and hand off the introductions to Paul Andrus, who's the Community Development Director.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay. I'll try to speak louder, okay?
So we'll use our outdoor voices because we don't have a mic hooked up. So I'm Paul. I work with the County Community Development Office. Thanks for coming tonight. This discussion tonight is to get your opinions and input on what the ultimate process and vision that we want to have for what we're calling the 20th Street parcel, where the not so smart house sits right now. And just from a little bit of context, some of you, or maybe many of you know that a few years ago the county had a project on board to build a hotel in a conference center, and COVID happened, and so that severely impacted a number of projects, including this. And so that project didn't happen, obviously, but we're here to, in that meantime, County Council approved the Los Alamos downtown plan, and they also approved a plan, if you're not aware, for White Rock Town Center as well. I think it was approved in 2021.
October 21.
And we also updated our development code, which is our zoning code, to allow for hopefully some new ideas in terms of redevelopment, including increased densities and building heights and parking and that. And that's been a long process in the making, but those are just recently been approved as well. So we're here at site specifically to get, like I said, to get your input on this parcel. We will have a survey. How's that going to work?
QR code.
A QR code.
And there's some paper.
We'll get into all of that too. But we have some visuals around the room. So once we've gone through this process here, please take time to take a look at those. And then there will be opportunities to go actually walk the site, because that's always, we like to do that as planners, because get out into the location to actually be able to visualize things. So it's pretty, like a lot of things along the canyon it's a pretty dramatic setting. So with that, Noah Berg from Wilson and Company, we've brought in Wilson and Company to help us have this guided conversation, if you will. And we'll be talking a little bit about what happens after tonight, so that you're aware of what the council process may be and what we're having to do. Ultimately, what we want to take all of this input forward at some point in the near future and actually go out for a solicitation for redevelopment of the site. So using all this input, using the downtown plan vision, so that we can ultimately go out to the private sector and see what we can get back in terms of redevelopment proposals. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Noah and have him take it from here.
Thanks, Paul. So I briefly wanted to go over the agenda tonight, and if anybody can't hear me, tell me to speak louder, because I'll try my hardest before I lose my voice. So we are going to go over some of the introductions of the people who have been involved in this project. We'll go over the existing conditions. We'll go over the goals and policies surrounding the site. Then we'll ask you to share your input. And then we'll take a brief walking tour outside. And it's actually great weather for it. It's cooled down a little bit. And then we'll ask you to kind of partake in looking around and being interactive with the boards that are around the room, that surround the room. So we can go to the next slide. So first off, I'd like to thank Los Alamos Public Schools for providing this space for us tonight, and also acknowledge the superintendent, Jennifer Guy, who's here in attendance, and thank her also for helping out with this, so thank you. So I'm Noah Burke, I'm from Wilson and Company, I'm the planning manager and we're the consultant on this project. With me tonight is Leroy Duarte. Leroy's right there. He's also from Wilson and Company, he's a planner with us, as well as Ben Bockwitz, who's right here, and he's also a planner with Wilson and Company. And from the county tonight, you've all met Paul. There's also Sophia Saida, who's right here, and Jane Matthews as well, who are kind of our contacts on this project. There's many other folks from Los Alamos County who are in attendance as well. So I thank you all for that. So here's what the site looks like from an aerial view. As you can see, it abuts 20th and Trinity, and then also it hugs the canyon. I think you may all be familiar with this. And we'll go over a few more of the existing conditions, so we can go to the next slide. This is what it looks like from the air, from the drone footage that we'll see in a little bit. As you can see, the street was completed when they did some recent work, and it kind of folds out there. Next slide. This is what it looks like, and you'll see these views from when you're walking the site in a little bit, as well as some more views there. So there are some key goals and policies surrounding the redevelopment of this site, and I'll go over these more in detail, but as you can see, at front and center is the downtown master plan that kind of sets up the framework for visioning this site. Some of the guiding principles are behind it are the economic vitality strategic plan, the comprehensive plan, the housing market needs assessment, as well as the Los Alamos tourism strategic plan. Next slide. There's also the goals and policies surrounding the top 3 council priority areas from 2022. And the first one is enhancing support and opportunities for local business environment. Second one's increase the amount and type of housing options, and investing in infrastructure. And then from that, there's the top 3 council priority areas that include focus on racial equity and inclusivity. Those are enhancing and supporting opportunities for local business environment, increasing the amount and type of housing options, and also investing in infrastructure. So going back to the downtown master plan, the elements of that are very key to this are urban form and identity, the housing component, the transportation component, the economic vitality component, as well as public spaces, infrastructure, and sustainability. We elaborate more on these on the boards that are around, so we didn't want to go into too much detail, but did want to touch on it very briefly. Next slide. So what's very important to this from the downtown master plan is the urban form component and the identity of this. And within that framework, it stated that you wanted to update the downtown zoning to promote more of a pedestrian-oriented development patterns so that you could potentially live and work within the area. You could use amenities within the area. You want to increase and enhance the access and the existing pedestrian infrastructure. You want to implement a branded type of wayfinding system so that you know your way around, as well as expand and increase the placemaking strategies. From the housing section of that, we want to look at increasing the multifamily densities and the heights, which was recently approved to a height of up to 86 feet. You also want to incentivize affordable housing because we all know that there needs to be more affordable housing. And then kind of encourage an urban mix of housing types. The takeaway from the transportation is that you want to implement safe pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. You want to improve and increase access and connectivity, and expand convenient access to transit as the downtown continues to densify. From the economic vitality plan, there's a big emphasis on retail space preservation and providing ground level retail spaces, as well as improving the mom and pop access to retail areas. There's an emphasis on promoting mobile vending, such as food trucks, food carts. And then also, you want to activate first floor frontages. So what that does look like in practice is having your first floor, not just having parking in front of that, but actually activating the first floor. And then also have strategies that incentivize redevelopment of vacant and underutilized sites and structures, such as this. Then there's the sustainability goals, and that has to do with implementation of solar covered parking, electric vehicle charging stations, green parking lots, and then also looking at revising the landscaping to kind of promote active water harvesting standards and sustainable plant practices. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is really to explain this project and then the different elements and different types of policies and guiding principles, and then the recent plans and studies that have been done surrounding this site, so that we can start to vision this site and start to see what the site might look like and what the potential of this site could possibly be, and to gather your feedback here tonight. And then also to inform you about the project deliverables. And then your input tonight will also be shared with the county council along with the project deliverables. So you might be asking, what are the deliverables and what does that mean? Well, that means what are we as Wilson and Company as the consultant tasked to provide to the county. And what we will be doing over the next 3 months. So just so you know what the schedule of this project looks like from a planning perspective, is that the schedule of this is we've already started working with the county to start kind of getting the history, the background documents, and starting to kind of envision what this could look like. And then we presented to the county council on this, what we're undertaking, a little bit of the history. It was a presentation very similar to tonight's. It's a formal introduction of the project. And then where we're going with this moving forward is tonight is our public meeting. And then we will be, from here, we'll be working with the county to develop concept plans for 20th Street and Trinity site. And also looking at and consideration of the immediate and adjacent parcels, what that could look like in the future, but really focusing on this site as we've outlined it. And then create 2D renderings of the concept plans once we decide what some possibilities are for the site. And then ultimately summarizing that in the report form and presenting that to the commission and as well as to council, and visuals of the development. So now, for this, after this presentation, like I said, we'd like you to share your input, and the way that will be done is through the QR code that's over there. There's an online survey that has some questions that will really help the county be informed about the site. And the input on it and the feedback. And then there's also some paper copies. So we'll ask that everybody, and share this with your friends, please, family and friends, because the more input, the better. And there's a website available for this as well, and there'll be a copy of this presentation. So after this presentation, we'll take a tour of the site. We'll break out into groups. There'll be county folks who will be guiding some of the tours, and then Wilson and Company will also be guiding some of the tours. So please feel free to find a group that you feel comfortable with, and we'll go walk the site. And then there'll be also the informational boards, and we'll ask you to share your input on those as well. So really surrounding all of this, kind of look at the site as it's shown here and look at it as kind of a canvas, like a blank canvas. And keeping in mind that there's all of these different guiding principles and all these different design elements behind it, kind of creating, you know, the framework for you to think within, like thinking that we can have 86-foot heights, thinking of this could be a mixture of residential and non-residential development. This could be an opportunity to create spaces and active areas. And all of that is stipulated in the downtown master plan, because the downtown master plan is kind of a vision for the area in a way, but also it sets up the different types of design guidelines regarding of that. And then, you know, of course, there's the housing component. What types of housing could work? You know, we have, and then the connectivity. You know, what types of trails could come into the site? You know, what would work here? What spaces could be activated here? You know, could portions of this be a food truck park? Could a portion of this be a civic area, like a playground or a dog park? You know, don't go too gigantic. You know, we probably can't put like a Target there because that's probably not going to fit, because that maybe is not the highest and best use of the site. But we do know that there is a housing need. We know that there is a retail and commercial component need to this. So thinking within those parameters and within the design guidelines and the economic vitality guidelines is really how we want to start thinking about this. So with that, I believe that we will ask you to take the survey. How you do this, if you don't know, is you take your phone out and you can do the camera and you can go up there. But
so I'm sure you have questions, and so there's a couple of, so we want to take a little bit of time to do, so if anything that might help sort of create a clearer picture of what we want to do. This is an opportunity to do that. There's a couple things that I wanted to point out. So there was the map that showed, can you go back to the map, the blank slate? So this section, obviously, we're in a building right now. We're all sitting in a building that's on this site, which is the schools. The schools own this site. Just through this shred or this envisioning process, working with, with the understanding that the schools know that we were talking about this, we just thought it would be, since it's publicly owned, school board controls, they're the deciders what happens with this parcel. But what if? This is sort of the idea that if we were to have a broader area to look at and envision what perhaps could happen in the future. That's why we included that. But that's, again, these are to just do visualizations and think about what would be really good to have in this area. And then I had another comment. Oh, and so right now, currently, the county will be, County Council will be finalizing a development agreement, purchase and sale agreement with our folks at Pet Pangea for this site on the corner. That's already been something that council wanted to move forward with. So that's in the mix too. So I just want you to be aware of all of that. It just, things are a little bit fluid, but that's what's happening on the ground. Dan, did you have any comments that you want to make before we just start getting questions?
I think that there's what I was hearing little rumors about is about the trail, the rim trail. That is something that we're considering as well. That's part of the plan. Our Public Works and Engineering Department are actually working on getting the underlying.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Because that's the whole reason I'm here. What are you
Well,
saying
that's
about
why I wanted to make sure. The trail is already part of the conversation. It's already been part of council's discussion. Our Engineering and Public Works Department is working on the engineering to see how they can best place it, cost effectively access and whatnot. So I don't want anyone thinking that this is a project where we're going to take the bike trail and push it off. It's going to be considered ultimately at the end of the day. So what we want to do is how do we utilize that open space, that bicycle access, the rim of the canyon rim trail to create an experience or an activity here on this project. So I heard people talk about that, so I want to be really clear that it's part of the discussion that we're having right now, and that's at the direction of council.
So at that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the questions. Greg?
Yeah. So from a timing standpoint, if we look at this charrette to take over the whole site, part of that timing would be finding a new home for the school district. Right, so if this thing were to go,
That's
That's
a
part of
great
it.
question. So my short answer is going to be not necessarily. That if that in fact is something that happens through interest from the development community and interest from the school board and a lot of other factors, that would probably be a later stage type consideration. Again, this is something. This process is something again that can really alarm or create question marks when we're really just trying to open this up in a broad way so that you can, again, just start thinking and looking for a vision of uses, top priorities for what ought to be in the location, and the design process should it become toward a real project. That's where the rubber hits the road with respect to the site topography, where utilities have to come in, where, it's a state road, so there's things for DOT, Department of Transportation. There's all sorts of planning and development considerations that have to come into play. So if we say, oh, we have to have this thing, the trail, for instance, this has to be its exact alignment. In reality, when the engineers and designers get involved, things may have to move around, but like something like the trail or other assets we talk about, amenities that we talk about tonight, may just shift in a different location on the site. I hope that's helpful. But to answer your question with the school, that we just included that in the bigger picture, just to envision what if. And that's about it. On the county parcel that we're talking about, that's where we will be wanting to move forward to seeing what we can get from a redevelopment perspective. Yes, sir.
I have some specific questions related to the smart house. Is it the case that the smart house is likely not going to remain in its present location? And if so, has the county looked into the feasibility of it being physically moved as opposed to deconstruction?
We've looked in the possibility that it would stay. So there will be scenarios in which it stays. Don't know what that necessarily looks like or what the use might be. We've looked at it going away, deconstructing it, as you say. I think the moving option isn't really available. Anne Laurent was one of the project managers way back when, and so I think we looked into it, didn't we, Anne?
Right, so I think in order to, you'd have to panelize it, and part of it is on a slab on grade. It would have to need someone to come up with a plan, and it wouldn't be like it may not be cost effective. There certainly may be materials as part of that can be reused or salvaged or reimagined that still have value.
Is part of it, does it have a basement with a foundation? So when you say part of it's on slab on grade, what's the other part?
We framed out part of it, but the garage specifically is slab on grade. There's nothing that would keep that supported should you try to lift it up and move it.
So the rest of it is on joists with crawl space?
I'd have to go back to look at the plans, but what I know is the dimensions of the rest of the building are the dimensions of in two pieces. It could fit on a semi-truck legally and be a load, but keep in mind that all the systems are connected. They would all have to be disconnected and redone, and it would not be as easy as we had hoped initially to just, like you would do a modular type building.
And what kind of physical condition is the house in if there was a plan of action that involved it staying in place and being used for something?
Right now, it's actually being used in an interim manner by the county. The condition is pretty good, actually. So, and it was used prior to that, after the smart house use back in 2013, I believe, when it was sort of decommissioned. It was used for office space. So it's been used as opposed to just sitting vacant. for an indefinite period of time. Laura?
Thank you.
So Paul, are there pictures of the smart house inside? I mean, I managed to get some a while ago. I'm just wondering, are there any here this evening so people could see?
Do we have
How
any
good it
pictures of the
looks.
interior? I don't think we do, but I think when we follow up with the Sylvia, we probably could post that on the website just so
We
people
can
can
get
see
them.
that.
So Paul, the other question I have, and this is because of questions I've had from people in the community that have asked me about it. Why are we going full bore with something like this when the original intent before the county quietly brought the Marriott question in? The plan was to have small business, local small businesses be able to have lots in that area and have business. How did we jump from that scenario to this scenario?
Well, I think that's a great question. I would say that's not, this process tonight is not eliminating any of those discussions. I think, what we're trying to do is we have this downtown plan, and it had some high-level, we had value discussions. What do we want our downtown to look like? What are the priorities in terms of housing, business, what have you?
But who's
It's not
we,
precluding.
Who's we, when you say we had
The community,
discussions?
this is the downtown plan. That was what we went through and was approved in October 2021.
So how would the original plan with the lots that would be available for small businesses, how did that, did a different group look at the area then and say, well, we're going to change everything about what we had planned for there?
No, we could have that type of a scenario that comes into play where the development, that can be a value discussion for this process, and we incorporate that into as we move forward, and council will have that discussion as well. When we go out because county council wants us to competitively solicit this development site at some point, we might be taking some of those things into consideration. We just don't know what's going to come in the door.
So if it's not presented as an option here before the public, who are only now coming into the picture, I believe it should be included as an option that we do what we had, as a county, had wanted to do before. And then another option would be, you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So the no change plan, I guess, is what.
No change from.
From what was originally envisioned to have there.
Okay.
We say we need restaurants, we need small businesses, we need space for them, but yet it sounds like they're getting ready to put out, that eventually there'll be an RFP put out where people can come and bid. Well, yeah, there are a lot of people in town who are going to say, oh yeah, let's have those big 86-foot buildings in there. And then the rest of the people are going to be like, oh my gosh, why should we do that to that beautiful length against the county?
Right, so I think when you get into some of the details of the examples and visuals that we have here, there are examples, there are scenarios in which businesses, it's called mixed use, right? So one of the high-level priorities is housing. Another high-level priority is support for businesses. And you can, in a mixed-use development, you can incorporate both of those things. You have spaces for tenants, you have, with lease space for businesses, you have other scenarios that can come into play if they are feasible economically, financially, because we want something to happen on this site that makes sense, that incorporates a lot of the different priorities in here. But I'm just saying, these are all possible scenarios. It's not, this isn't an intent to eliminate any of those things. This is to try and get input, because that discussion was, what, 5 years ago? Yeah, so in that time, we've had this downtown plan come in, we've had a project not come to fruition, so council has asked us to re-socialize this site.
Can I ask one more question? But what about the traffic? One of the things we're going to have to look at here, we're going to have a daycare center across the road, all the apartments up beside, below the hospital. The traffic is going to be nuts. There are 2,000 more people coming from the lab. how do you anticipate that you can put all this type of activity into that section?
So, and that's a great question. So the challenge here is to have this conversation, because I would say as a planner, would you rather have folks living here taking public transportation rather than coming up in the stream of traffic from off the hill? That's the point of infill mixed-use development, where we actually have people who are working up here, living up here, as opposed to getting in their car by themselves, adding to that traffic.
But, you know, we're back to where we had a counselor who said when we did the road diet that we needed to think about the people who would live here. And we need to come back to.
Or I think we're kind of getting out a little bit in the weeds.
At,
and I think these are the things that we want you to give us input on, so that we have this laundry list of priorities for council.
Let's remember what we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, we're not reopening the downtown master plan. That's an adopted plan. It's gone through a significant public hearing process to be developed and where we are today. What we are trying to do is create a scope, a very specific scope of priorities and desires based on that plan specifically for this property and the adjacent properties. So that when we go out to solicit, we're being even more specific to the development community, so that they aren't coming in guessing what we want. They see that the bike path is really important, that housing is really important, that spaces, small spaces with shared, maybe this isn't important, but I'm going to say it anyway, small spaces for retail, mom and pop shops or startup restaurants and so on are on there. That's what we're looking for today. What are the priorities that we want to put into that solicitation description when we put it out? And yeah, we're having the conversation, we're doing the survey, we'll go back in front of council, they're going to have a lot of talk, and then they're going to say, staff, go solicit this, solicit for this. George, you had a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so one of the things that, you know, it's sort of been hanging out there is finding a space in the downtown area for a mid-school center. And constantly the issue is we don't have, the heart's there, but we don't have the space. Has some consideration been given to, could some of this be the space for something like that, or other things that, you know, are looking for that aren't necessarily private development or housing, but are other things that we need in downtown, and there's a limited amount of downtown property that's owned by the county?
That's a really good example of this. The short answer is yes. Yeah, I mean, we're in a situation here with no land to build on. We don't have a big parcel, they call them green fields, where we can build a Walmart and 5,000 housing units. We don't have that. This is an exercise in understanding how we need to plan smartly is in an infill basis, and if it includes public or educational type uses, that can get on the list as well. But just keep in mind, at the end of the day, you know, it's going to be a process where not everything under the sun is going to be possible, because again, space limited in space, and we've established a lot of high-level priorities recently. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what's the potential available buildable space that we're talking about?
How many acres is it? I'm awful at these things, because I always ask acreage, and I never retain that. It's never in my
And
head.
do you remember, it's one of our, on one of our boards, it mentions how many, there are three.
That part is like 6.2.
It's about 6 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that doesn't include the additional,
Yeah.
say.
Does that include the corner that could potentially be Pangea?
Yes,
Yes,
it does
it does.
include
Yes.
that. The whole planning area
How large
does.
is that subparcel?
That's half
0.45 acres. I
So
think,
then we're
or
down
half
like to
acre,
5.7, not counting the school's board property. So 5.5 acres,
Yeah.
plus or minus.
Not counting the schools.
And not counting
That's-
that
Yeah, I
Pangea
don't-
is.
Right.
if that ends
Yeah.
up going to-
It's 2.5 acres.
One, right? No, the whole site is 3 acres.
It's 3 acres.
Oh,
Minus,
okay.
take a half acre off.
See, we're gonna do this as a community, right? I mean,
I
somebody will
said I
have the
walk in with a
answer.
number.
Right?
Who brought a tape measure?
Yeah.
John?
So would you, I'm sorry, can you back up the screen to the original picture and clarify for me, because you said two things that I've got to clarify. One is, the schools are involved in part of this.
Just in concept.
Okay, but you said that they would have to approve it.
Yes,
Right.
anything that happens on the school's property would
Okay,
have
but
to go, if it's somehow through this process or another process, they receive a proposal for redeveloping their site, they're gonna have to go through that process to decide whether that's something they would pursue.
So part of their site is the schools?
That's part.
Oh, that is part of the
Yeah,
school
where
thing.
you're sitting right
So
now.
they're just, okay. Okay, so they've got the parking and the buildings out here, because it really, okay. so
Yeah, that's
a little
been,
misleading.
no, well, we had there's a couple of other,
Okay.
where we show the improvements on it. That was just what if it was completely
So
dirt.
tell me again now what's gonna happen with Cindy, and that has gone around to another point, or what's?
So with Pet Pangea, the proposal that was submitted to council is for that half-acre parcel that's right on Trinity. And council wants to get into a development agreement to see whether Pet Pangea is able to redevelop that site. That's where that is right now. But in order to do that, we have to have an agreement that they approve, so then other processes take place.
There's a public hearing on the 27th before.
Okay, but that was the original plan anyway, and Cindy told me that, she got the kibosh on it from your department.
Yeah, it's, you know what,
So now you're going
I'm not
back
even
to
gonna
that.
go.
I know, but
Let's not do that
Okay,
today,
but you're asking us to put some input in, and I'm thinking, well, like Maria said, this was supposed to be a small business thing to begin with. We shouldn't have to rethink this whole idea.
So again, I'm gonna go back to the reason why we are here with you guys, okay? 5 years ago, or whenever it was, there was this idea. It didn't happen. We've had a downtown plan that's gone through a 1.5-year process of approval with council, and I don't know how many public meetings we had. It was dozens.
Too many.
20 of them or something like that.
That's happened since the.
Since the original plan, or what, and I would argue it really wasn't a publicly vetted plan per se, it was a consideration of sorts, which could still be one of the scenarios. But that's why we're here tonight, because this council, rightfully so, wants us to bring this back, wants the community to provide this input. That's why we're here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just have one more question. When we do the walkthrough, can we get access to the inside of the smart house or no?
It's occupied right now.
Yeah,
We don't
it's-
have access to it.
The fire department's using it.
All right, I thought they were done with that.
I think the best thing right now would be, as we're going on a tour, to you're gonna be with staff and consultants, ask questions, we're gonna keep notes, we're gonna write things down, we're gonna listen. Walk around here, there's stickers at each of these boards. Pick out what you think are priorities and put lots of green stickers next to your priorities. We're gonna use that to help starting to develop that script of what we wanna propose to council and ultimately to the development community, to really make this the most vibrant, area in our downtown. Except for Merrimack, we know that's gonna be awesome. So but we wanna make sure that we understand what the community wants. And this is really a good chance through here and through the survey to really to kind of leave your mark and say what is important to you. And the small business discussion, that should be in there.
Yeah.
Put that in.
And again, I'm sorry, Susie.
Should we, maybe just time with the survey, there was a suggestion we should launch into that now, but would it make more sense to do that after we've kind of done a little?
Yeah, it does.
And it'll be live after this meeting.
We had a full room and we wanted to get going because we knew
Gotcha.
the chunk of everyone was really here.
Gotcha.
And we didn't want you to be sitting around too long today.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
For that, lots of stickers lends itself to gaming. Can you establish just a maximum limit, please?
One sticker. You like this item on this chart, you get to put one sticker. Don't take a sheet of stickers and cheat, because that'll just skew and mess up what we're trying to accomplish tonight. So,
One sticker per item.
one sticker per item, but you're welcome to put stickers on.
So one of the lines in the project description actually says preference to multimodal connectivity to local existing small businesses. Can you elaborate more on that? Because there's a lot of small businesses angled to it, but there's lots of housing as well in there. And the description itself is quite small actually, like 3 or 4 lines. And the key line in that to me was preference to multimodal connectivity to existing small businesses. It's very broad, but if you guys have any.
It's a lot of planner speak, is what that is, yeah. So you wanna,
I could try. And what we want to do is we're trying to create, I mean, the whole master plan for both White Rock and Los Alamos town site is to create activity, bring more customers into the downtown who can walk safely, ride their bike safely, or take a bus to the next place safely to shop, buy hamburgers, breakfast burritos, and so on. That's the whole purpose. We really want to wake up and give and improve the opportunity for small businesses to survive in our downtowns.
So follow-up question, so I understand that right now you guys are just trying to basically get a list of priorities out from the public. What is the best way for these existing small businesses to engage the county in terms of what we would like to do? Is it just to basically talk to Wilson, for example, or is it to come together and give the ideas right away in a proposal form?
I actually would have one, and then I'll let you go. You know what the conversation around small business, and all types of small businesses has been the consistent theme, not just here, but that spaces are expensive. I have too big of a space, those sorts of things. And so I think what would be helpful in this is, what are the elements of things that small businesses need? Like, what is the size space? What are the types of spaces that would be good to have available? What would be, those sorts of things, just more of a descriptive need list from businesses in town. Because we're pretty aware of some of these issues. That would help sort of drill down into, when a solicitation finally comes out, those are elements that'll be on the menu. And not to use them as a restaurant, but those are the things that would be in there that we would want to be looking for, that whoever would be able to, or the group that would be developing the site would be tasked to provide.
Yeah, and to go to your other question, there's going to be plenty of ways for people to engage in this discussion via the survey, calling Sylvia on a daily basis. She loves phone calls. We're fully engaged with LACDC and the Main Street and Chamber groups. So reaching out to, going over to the small business center. You can go over to the university. You can go over and talk to Rin or to Lauren or a variety of people over there and provide any kind of feedback there. There's so many ways to reach out to us. We want to be engaged. We want to hear what your needs are. Paul really brings up a good point. Those small business, it's not just a matter of wanting lots of small businesses, it's why. What are we trying to address when we're creating small business spaces? What are we trying, where are ways that we can have a developer or a group of developers or a development, so try to solve those so there are opportunities to start a new business in one format or the other. So this is actually a really exciting process here, because unlike the master plan where you're talking about generals and big lofty goals, we're getting into the nitty-gritty now. So we can actually talk about what we really want, and then we get to proceed all the way through to a development phase. So this is pretty cool.
So I'll point out something here real quick just to everybody. The reason we don't have restaurants around Los Alamos is not because people don't want to start them. It's because every single facility in the entire county is so substandard that they cannot open a restaurant inside of it due to current regulations. And there are no new facilities that they can open inside it. So everybody that's tried to start a restaurant has not been able to open it, even at great expense to them, because the facilities are so substandard. So if we're thinking about building new facilities to code from the ground up, that could actually allow new restaurants to go in.
You had a discussion, sir, and then I think I'd like to get us down to some small groups and small conversations. And I know there were people who came in later because the newspaper called out for the formal presentation to start at 6. We're going to do a little mini presentation, kind of rolled over, and then catch up with everyone in the tour. We want to make sure everyone's got all the information.
And we're assuming that infrastructure, gas, water, sewer, electricity, fiber, yada, yada, all that's available for any potential buildable sites, correct?
It's amongst many things we're going to be assuming tonight, yes.
Well, I would just add that when the cul-de-sac was built, which was a temporary, believe it or not, it was a temporary space that we knew we wanted to think about future development. All of those utilities were upgraded, so at least in the street or modern enough. George?
So just one, so when we're talking about engaging with a developer, would it be engaging with a developer who then would be a landlord for folks, or people, would businesses have an opportunity to buy?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Don't know. That we,
Those are
that,
two
it's
big-
our,
those are
it's
two big
the-
difference
it's
things.
our scope to draw, or to draft. So that's what we're working on right now.
So that was a good list of informational sources that you named a few minutes ago. Would it be possible to put that out, some type of a news release out that would show for people who are in businesses that are working all day, for example, to give them a list of people, how to contact them, narrow it down a little bit to that, you know, to what could be used. Something that hasn't been mentioned is using that area for a social services hub, which the county has been talking about for years. So I think it would be useful to everybody to have it ready on hand for prospective business owners and existing business owners in town that might be interested in this.
Maura, we
Could not be here tonight.
currently have that with LSDC, with Small Business Sector. We have that list. Other information related to this particular project is on our website.
But we'll take a look
No,
at that. If
we
there's anything
can
else we can
certainly,
add.
we'll take this input, we'll incorporate it in. We don't have a specific project website for this thing, but we have our community development county website.
But just a news release.
Oh, and we can-
You
sure.
Find it all in
That-
one spot. Just- Thank you.
And
I just wanted to mention, and just reiterate that how early we are in this process. We're really just kind of wanting initial thoughts. We don't have a solution in mind yet. And I'm hoping that when you see the survey, you'll see it lists all of the different allowed uses that's in the new code.
yeah,
It's not making presuppositions. So hopefully you'll see what you're thinking on those lists. And if you don't, there's 2 open-ended questions, so we just encourage you to use those open-ended questions to convey to us whatever you'd like to convey. We'd like to know.
yes, sir.
Why not just put these parcels up for public auction to local real people to do what they will that isn't dependent on government contracts and, you know, let the market do its thing?
Well, we have to follow the market by state procurement standards, and so we have to sell this real property, and it's in our, part of our code and it's in state code, but in our code it's 95% of the market value. I mean, that's what we're bound by. Otherwise, there's this thing called anti-donation in the state.
Well, I'm saying auction it, right? You sell it, the county gets money.
Well, that's essentially what we're gonna be doing. Not really an auction, but it's a solicitation.
Right, so our code prescribes what we can sell land for. It's not just the lowest bidder. It has to be within a certain amount of price.
Well, I'm sure it's gonna be way higher than whatever the
Well-
county requires.
Well, so what I was gonna say is, in order for folks to do a development, you need the parameters right. Any developer knows that if there's a parcel that's divided a certain way for a certain use, or a certain size that allows certain uses or certain heights, and so part of this process is to really get those things in place. Otherwise, you have to go through a process of subdividing, dividing parcel lines, all those kind of things. So there's a lot of pre-planning for a property to be developable and ready for somebody. And so that's what this process will help identify. And then I would just say the other piece of it is there are certain things like affordable housing where the county can participate. And I will tell you, in my experience here, most developments and most people are going to want some sort of assistance or some sort of, whether it be utilities or those kind of things. And so in order to do that, we need a development agreement and we need to go through that process. So I understand what you're saying, keep it simple, make it available, but in its current form, it wouldn't be anyway, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I don't understand. I mean, if an investor is going to put up their own money, especially if they live here and they're interested in the welfare of this community, I mean, I think those are the most powerful motivators you can get for doing the right thing with the project, isn't it?
But there are some cons with that. For example, you might end up getting one basically high speed for everything, and just all you get is high-rising housing in a downtown without any small businesses or anything else. So there are pros and cons to that, what you're saying.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm suggesting a local person who wants to see a mix of things that we need.
But as soon as you say who wants to see a mix of things, that needs to be in the solicitation.
That's fair, you can put stipulations in there.
That's what they're doing, that's what they're doing.
Paul, is the property currently zoned in a particular category?
It is zoned
Downtown.
downtown.
LA.
It's zoned, it's a mixed-use zone downtown, and it has, and actually on the survey, I believe we have
Yes.
the list of uses that are currently in the code. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's go hiking.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go hike.
Any other
Yeah.
questions? So,
Yeah, for the setbacks.
So-
Pulled that out of the discussion, that's not I can't remember for sure, we just talked about it in specific ways.
Are these buildings, they must be occupied, they must be rented.
I'm not sure about if they're occupied or not. I mean, most of them are. They're mostly spaces, but they're leased out through the schools.
Right. So we want to, the schools are going to want to ensure that they continue to get income, so maybe we could do the same thing that we did with Smith's. That shared, the county buys this and then they lease the land from
the schools, potentially.
But they know all that, the schools know all that.
Yeah, they would. And then all the way, the property all the way north here is actually privately owned. So, could that be part of the vision? It might be part of the vision, but right now it's privately owned and semi-occupied in most of the places, but to the point there's upgrades that need to happen to that as well. But then you have a lot of different access points, right? Right now you have a lot of access points coming off the road. And the idea behind this is that we would have that centralized access there onto Trinity through 20th. So that you would have all of this, instead of having little driveways and, weird shaped lots, you'd actually start to create like actual movable, developable area through the stipulations.
That would certainly be helpful for our cyclists and pedestrians, because that is deadly.
this is totally deadly. I almost got hit.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever look at a parcel, if you ever look at a parcel map of how the parcels, because they're not all one parcel right now, they're multiple, but they're cut up like little flag lots, and that was a 1950s, 60s thing that happened. You wouldn't want that in today's planning, right? Because you would want to have focal points for traffic to go to. You would want connectivity in the right ways, not the wrong ways, where you have different points.
In somewhat of a similar way, I'm curious to what extent, like the connectivity and like the crossing. I know there was talk of like pedestrian and bike infrastructure, but it just seems like this is so unfriendly to bicyclists that like, to what extent would it be able to be?
So it would basically focus on trail connectivity, right? Like the bike trails connect to the bicycle trails that are along the roadways, which then are supposed to, because there is a master plan for connectivity. So,
But then there's like the bike lane on Trinity that just disappears.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
It's
such a
totally
thoroughfare.
useless.
And if you take the parallel, then you can't get across. So it's nice to have the bike routes connected, but if you're like a commuter, then that doesn't necessarily help.
right, and I think most of the focus would be to get that type of feedback from you, like saying what is working, what isn't working, what are the opportunities here, and what are the strengths of this site, right? Like, look, I mean, it literally could be a blank slate that we could then develop in the right ways rather than the wrong ways that make it a good place to live, a good place to work. You want to bring your family, you could raise a family here. I mean, that's also part of the discussion is, do we need more childcare? But which way does the community, we know that it needs more housing. Could we plug the housing gap potentially with all the new developments that are coming online, the new multifamily? Is this an opportunity to create affordable workforce housing to keep people here, create more amenities? Like what about a bowling alley? Like would a bowling alley attract families to this area?
Someone would love a bowling alley.
Yeah.
But only
I-
2 acres, that does not. Yeah.
No, but but a bowling alley actually doesn't have to be very big. Like I'll just use Santa Fe. That's where I used to work for 16 years. Santa Fe put a bowling alley in. Now all the people I know go to that bowling alley. It's like they take their families there, their friends there, they have birthday parties there. And it's not that big of a space. I mean, how big would you say that space is? Maybe 10,000 square feet?
About,
Yeah.
At DeVargas?
Yeah.
The one at DeVargas?
Yeah.
I know so many people from here who go down there.
Yeah, so like, what, could you imagine what that is? Because there's not a lot of activities for people to do besides being outdoors and stuff, but the youth and raising a family here, you could, you know, even as adults, you know, we would want to go there and, you know, maybe have a beer or something. You know, brewery is always this spot where people think they can connect. You know, everybody wants to go, let's meet at a brewery or something, or a coffee shop, or a tea room, or a tea house. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and you'll see that in the survey. So it's,
If the Canyon Rim Trail gets completed, that would be a major commuter route.
Correct, I was gonna say.
Yeah, that seems like it's pretty critical.
I think there's a lot of movement to get it finished.
The
And
problem is the private parcel. Like the county can build that parcel, but then what do you do about the private?
By the Oppenheimer condos.
What do you mean?
The Oppenheimer condos go right down to the canyon.
Yes, right. Yeah, so then you're just hosed, but some of these, there's room for a trail, but it's privately owned, and I don't know what the situation is with
well,
that.
and so that's also part of the discussion is, could we acquire this private land through this redevelopment? Kind of motivates that, you know, and then does that continue the vision, right? Because that is actually a real conversation piece right now. And I can tell you that this transformer is not going to move, right? That's going to stay. That's for sure. Like in all our discussions, it's going to stay. But
that's
there's
a mural, man. No matter what. Somebody better start planning that right now.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a mural.
But could that be where part of the trail comes out, right? Gets you to 20th, which then takes you out to the park or whatever you want, whichever direction you want to go, or other opportunities for transportation. But then could this be a civic space? Could this be a space that could have food trucks or an artisan market that could, you know, be repurposed at different times of the year? I mean, it's a trailhead. That's the most opportunity. You know, you see a lot of these trails like in different cities, they have their nodes of activity. They don't just have to be where you lock your bike and that's where it is. It's an opportunity. So if you guys want to keep walking, we'll keep doing that too. My watch just told me I got all my steps in from here to there. No, just kidding. So then just to give you an idea of what height kind of looks like in practice, so you could build, that's about 75 feet.
What? That's only 75 feet?
Yeah. Well, it looks bigger because there's nothing bigger than 3 stories anywhere around it.
And that stays?
That will probably stay. Yeah, yeah. No, and there is talk about painting it actually. It's kind of funny in these conversations with the county, everybody would love to see that as like painted, not just a big monolithic brown thing, but like, is that opportunity for the back? Could the back?
Quest, it used to be Quest, what is it now?
You know, could you potentially, instead of having, you know, there's an opportunity to be innovative here too, right? Because part of the downtown plan talks about having centralized parking, you know, like not just having all these parking spaces and parking lots, but is there an opportunity for a parking garage to house the multiple uses so that you just go into a garage? It's not just in your face type of garage, but it blends in like part of, you know, you see a lot of these, like downtown Albuquerque, you know, the parking garages are hidden in downtown Albuquerque in some of the newer parts or along the rail line. And so, you know, could potentially, we know that could stay, and we know that that's 75 feet, and what would maybe potentially 86 feet look like? Because you could technically have 86 feet up along the roadways right here. And that's what's been approved. And so that could be potentially up to 7-story buildings with the first 2-story being retail or commercial, or, you know, or you could have, you know, that's what you'll see in the survey questions, is these type of questions that we want feedback on, you know. So that's why I'm really pushing you to share that with your friends, and let's get like 7,000 responses.
Yeah, that'd be
So,
great.
affordable housing is one of the stickers, and what does that mean to you?
To me, or what does it mean by definition?
No, I know
Because
it
he can
means-
tell you what by definition.
Yeah, so below
but-
market rate has to be subsidized by somebody.
Right.
So how does the county play into that?
Well, the county would own the land, so
Donate the land like they did with the DP Road?
right. That's potentially the opportunity. Now, the county's not a housing authority, right? So they're not going to
They're
go.
not going to build it themselves.
No, and that's why potentially all the feedback would help garner like a vision for this property, then that could develop into something to go out as an RFP for a developer to come in and do the vision that everybody has come up with, and you stick to that vision. So, you know, there'll be like 2 or 3 scenarios that'll be presented to the county council.
How often do affordable housing developments include retail in them?
Actually, it's becoming more of a concept than it used to be, because you know, Santa Fe has one that's right now that's going in off Agua Fria, and you know, I would go ahead and tell Greg he's been a good developer and great developer for a very long time, for as long as I've been living in New Mexico. So
A lot of times the retail subsidizes the housing.
Right.
Yep.
Makes sense.
They can pay the higher rent, so you can.
But yeah, start to think about these things. Like, here, could this be the trailhead? Because we know that's not going to move. Let's make that pretty. Let's activate the space. That could be an option. So in case everybody wanted to know or doesn't know, this is the smart house that's been a topic of conversation today. I don't think that smart house will be sticking around, but
It's, okay, go ahead.
but there's no decisions that have been made.
It would
So
make a beautiful restaurant,
yeah,
very Californian.
well, that should be a comment that you include in there.
Okay.
That would be helpful feedback. But yeah, that's the smart house, so that everybody wanted to know. And what is it doing right now? It's housing the fire department as they go through training. I mean, that's not its highest and best use, right? And I think the fire department people probably don't want to be there either, but because they would rather have places that are closer to where they're training.
Is there a big move to preserve it?
You know, that's a better question for Paul. Actually, Dan would be better to ask that
Why
question.
would you preserve it? It's not, I mean, it's a dumb house now, right?
Yeah, you know,
It was a smart house 10 years ago.
I mean, I've been inside it. It could stay.
You can have a 5-story apartment in there.
Well, that's true.
Well,
Large footprint, you know,
well, I don't know if you've all have read the housing assessment that was done, but it said we're somewhere in the lines of 3,100 homes short.
It's over 3,000.
Yeah, I think it's about 3,100. Now after,
and that hasn't, yeah.
yeah, so,
And it's not going to get better. Yeah, it's not going to get better.
right, and so that,
Stop pit production.
and so part of that is if you actually crunch the numbers after the housing that are in the pipeline that's been approved, plus the housing that's maybe going to be moving forward into development, and that's single family and multifamily, and there's a huge amount of multifamily that are coming in here. You could probably, after it's all said and done, there's an opportunity to plug that housing gap, which is not usually attainable for most cities in America, but it could be attainable, and this site could be instrumental to that. There's something to think about.
So I can't speak for other counselors or city staff, but I think there is no doubt that a stated priority to do as much housing downtown and infill as possible. Multifamily downtown, 100%. But I just don't know that we'll meet our needs. Excluding the North Mesa opportunity, it could also be a good revenue generator for the schools.
Right.
You know, so many things so many parameters have to be considered, and it's really not already in development. They only got, to my knowledge, through a feasibility study this past year that I don't think has even been published yet. Have you seen it, Ray? Yeah. You may. I've seen it. Yeah. So.
And I don't go to the school shopping.
That's 100% my impression. So, you know, there's so many obstacles that have to happen for that to
So,
Jody, I think everyone agrees with you that downtown's way better.
This would be so nice. It's so inconvenient out there, and for people who want to walk or cycle.
It is.
And it meets the sustainability goal to develop here within walking distance.
so then, yeah, it's okay. So, if you guys have seen the downtown master plan and the transportation component, there's been a couple scenarios that have played off in that. And one of them is continuing this street so that it curves around and hits 15th. Right? And then there's another opportunity, I forget the street, well, it must be 14th, right? No, it would be the street that bulbs out right in between these two properties. So, but getting a connection to 15th is also an option. You know, that's something that could be thought about. I mean, let's just say that this whole thing came together and we said, all right, you know, the school board decides that, or the schools decide that they could move to a newer facility that's not, and consolidate their efforts to a place, and that becomes developable, and then we start cutting the accesses that hit Trinity, and then you have basically focused access, right? You have connectivity, right? You could connect to 15th, which would then also enable your options for bicyclists to connect through the trail, right? Because this is all private. This is all private. There's storage containers here. Past that, I think it's the Elks Club, and then you have Sonic, which I'm pretty sure won't ever disappear because it seems to be very popular.
The options that there are.
But right now, the highest and best use is probably not a cul-de-sac in the middle of non-developable. So this is also something to think of. There's a drainage easement through right here because this side of the site, all the drainage should technically go towards the canyon because that's how it naturally goes. But we have drop inlets here to catch it and send it out down to a culvert that comes out over there. But there's conversations that the trail could come in here, right through here, and take advantage of that drainage easement. And if you move closer to it, you can see how much below grade it is. So, you know, it would be a natural opportunity for the trails to connect in there, and also about the transformer, because it provides a variety of options. Because I don't know if you can tell, but this private property past where that tractor is, it's a cliff. I mean, it just drops down, and it's private. That's lab property down there. So the lab property is not really an option, you know, or even discussed, right? But the trail is the option, and the trail area. So, you know, how could this work in a lot of ways? And so that's kind of, you know, this is kind of the vision that we wanted you to see and walk the site, because it's a lot easier to look at a map, but when you actually walk it and then we preface it with the presentation and you have all those ideas going, now we want you to go back, take a survey, and look at the boards and be interactive, you know, with everything. So did anybody have questions or self-explanatory walking tour?
I kind of wish Jennifer were still here, because I had this notion when I walked all this back when I was campaigning for county council. I just wanted to get my hands around a little bit, or, you know, touch and feel it and see all that stuff. I thought, you know, this school board meeting building sits empty most of the time.
Yeah.
They have 2 meetings a month there, and maybe school board members might take office hours there, but they could take office hours anywhere. And so that's why I would see if Jennifer was here. If anyone is familiar, maybe, I don't know why you would know, Greg, maybe, if anyone knows if any other schools staff use that building, because there's the admin building, which of course that has a purpose and it's occupied, but the school board meeting room building, it just seems like not highest and best use for that real estate. Mm-hmm. And I had proposed to somebody high up at the county one time, like, why couldn't the school board and county share meeting spaces? We've got this beautiful space at the Muni building. You know, planning and zoning uses it, county council, of course, other boards. But there's also the 3rd floor meeting room that has all the audio, it has all the AV stuff. I don't know. I just think we should get creative and think outside the box for different applications. And better sharing of resources and more economies of scale. And instead of wasting materials, because there's an opportunity cost, right? Every time we do something, if we relocate them and build them a new place, maybe that could have been something else. So, anyway, I'm just throwing that out there, because a lot of money was spent for that new Muni building. So, why not get the Muni building occupied 100% of the time? Because I'm sure it's not used 30 nights a week.
And they used to use the Pajito Cliffs meeting room for the school board meetings, if you recall. That was back in, 2010 when I was on the board?
When that was first built, you mean?
Yeah, and it's a really nice...
Oh, I've done some sessions there. It's amazing how nice that is.
It's very nice. It's out of the way. This
In fact,
is
I
way
think
more
I mentioned that to Street. There's plenty of parking and all that. Yeah. Grab a sandwich at the co-op and head on to your meeting. Yep.
Yeah, and I think, I like your idea of, negotiating with the schools like we did for Smith's. That's a good deal for the schools, and they get a lot of income from that too. So, and Jennifer knows all of this.
Right.
She knows it all.
Yep. Okay, well, I just had to throw that out there because I've been dying to say that to somebody.
Well, and then,
Because not all the answers are development.
Right.
Right, if you've got two buildings that are used 50% of the time,
Precisely.
and you're asking a developer to come up with a better idea, no, just have one building be used 100% of the time.
Precisely. Bingo, that's my
Yeah,
point.
so it's not all,
And I
it's
think
not all bricks and-
environmentally
it's not
that's
all
the right
bricks and
way to
mortar.
go and all that stuff. So
Got
from a sustainability standpoint.
Yeah, and I do think that the county, and I bring this up all the time, you've heard me before, I think the county, that Lanham needs to donate, to contribute something to the county, because the county is taking the entire burden for the development for the Lanham pit production project. So they need to step up too.
Well,
I know.
That's not going to happen.
It could though.
Yeah. I mean, we just need them to be supportive.
Let's see if Noah can solve that one.
I could probably negotiate something.